So I do want to clarify, this video is extension, so this won't be part of our power assignment, but it is still valuable information that can show up in portfolio work. Here we go. So given an equation, we talked about how when you have a sequence, your domain, your inputs can only be positive whole numbers. But when you have any other equation, how do you know what x is, or if it's a different letter, what inputs you're allowed to use? Here's the thing, it depends from case to case. So you kind of need to check for the following things. We're going to start by assuming that, hey, we're allowed to use any number, any real number. So positive, negative, decimal, fraction, whole, any real number is allowed to be used. And then these are the two most common reasons you have to take a number out of a domain. Here's how it goes. First, you're going to take out any inputs that make you divide by 0. Here's the reason. You can take, I'm going to pick a number 2. And you can divide it by anything. You can divide by 3, by negative 8.7. You can divide by any number except 0. Any calculator is going to tell you that doesn't work. It's undefined. It gives you an error. It doesn't equal anything. So if there is an x value that makes me do a division by 0, that's an x value that I can't use. Another common restriction is if you have a square root with a negative number underneath it. So I'm also going to hop back to the calculator here real quick. You can do a square root of 0. There we go. That works. You can do a square root of 6. You can do a square root of any positive number. Decimal, fraction, doesn't make any difference. But you can't do negatives under a square root. Those end up being what we call imaginary. They don't work out the same way. So when you're looking at what a domain can be, you're going to assume any number is cool. And then check. Do any numbers make me divide by 0? If so, I got to take them out. Do any numbers make me put a negative under a square root? If they do, I got to take them out. So here's an example. Let's take a look at this equation. We're going to determine what the domain is. So we're going to start by assuming that x may be any real number. And then just check. Is there any dividing by a variable here? So do you see the x after a division symbol or under a fraction bar? Nope, looks good. So no problem here. Is there going to be a square root with a negative underneath? Is there a square root anywhere here? No, there is not. Okay, there you go. This was simple. You're allowed to put any number you want in for your x here. And here's a way you can check. If you use your Desmos graphing calculator, you can just type in the equation. And so what was the equation? It was negative 2 times 1/3 to the power of x. And what you're just looking for is, does the graph stop, or does it have any missing parts? Like, are there any places that get skipped over? And so this graph, nope, keeps going, keeps going. All right, that's a good indication that we've done things well. Let's go again. All right, here's this one. G of x equals 4 minus square root of x. Let's start by assuming, hey, all right, our x may be any real number. And now let's check for our two common restrictions. Do we have division? Does the x show up after a division sign or in a denominator? No. Okay, so there's no problem there. Next, we need to make sure we don't have negative numbers under square roots. We do have a square root this time. That means that the number I put in for my x can't be a negative number. So I'm going to just add here, x may be any real number that is not negative. So 0 is okay, and any positive number is okay, but negatives aren't going to work. Now here's how you check this on a graph. We're going to go to Desmos and graph this, and what you'll see is the graph only exists for positive x's. Where the x's are negative, there's not going to be any graph. Let's take a look. So it was g of x equals 4 minus the square root of x. See where the graph is over here? This is where x is 0, or positive, where x is negative. So over on this side, nothing, no graph. That's how we know that our domain is set up properly. X can't be negative because there's no graph over there. That's because you have a negative square root going on. So this is something that I just want to let you know. We're going to work with this this year, next year. It's not going away. And it's going to take some practice to feel comfortable with. We're just getting a little start here. Okay, next up. Let's see. I want to start again by assuming that x can be anything. And then we're going to take out some numbers if we need to. Oh, this time, notice I said x, it's t's. Our inputs this time are called t's, so we'll be consistent there. So t may be any real number, except, let's check, do we have division going on? We do have some division going on. Okay, what I'm seeing is I'm dividing by t plus 1. And here's the thing. If t plus 1 is equal to 0, then that would force a division by 0, which is no good. So we're going to check and see here. What makes t plus 1 equal to 0? Okay, that happens if t equals negative 1. This is bad. I don't want this. I don't want a 0 in that denominator. So we're going to remove negative 1 from the domain. T can be any other number. That's fine. But t can't be negative 1. Because negative 1 plus 1 is 0, and 4 divided by 0 does not exist. Let's check. Are there square roots going on? No square roots. Okay, so we're all set there. So t may be any real number except negative 1. Let's check that on a graph, see how it looks. So what we should see is a graph that exists everywhere, except at the one location where t equals negative 1. Okay, so as I'm looking, I see graph everywhere. Now at t equals negative 1 rather, there's something funny going on. You see, we have what's called a vertical asymptote. Your graph has been torn in half. And if you go to our Desmos here and put in any number for the t, it's going to give you an output with one exception. You can't put in negative 1. Desmos knows that. We know it too. We said, hey, t can be any number except negative 1. Meaning if I put a negative 1 in for the t's, nothing comes out because division by 0 doesn't make any sense. Let's just go one more time. So this time, I don't want you to forget what we talked about earlier. Notice the big difference? We're looking at a sequence. Any sequence is restricted to inputs, positive whole number. Any sequence have inputs only of positive whole numbers. So even though we didn't check the divide by 0 thing, we didn't check the square root thing, that's because a sequence is a special type of function that always has that same domain.